Hello and welcome to this video debunking the pseudoscientific concept of structured water. The structured water goes by a range of names, so know your scam. The labels can include hexagonal water, gel water, cluster water, and variations of H3O2. The claims for structured water are your standard fare of nonsense that accompanies any purported panacea. Improved nutrient absorption, better health, detoxing, better function of the body, and more. Although it should be obvious in explaining how and why it is a scam unnecessary, we will go through why it is not just impossible, but a scam in pedantic detail, because why not? A water is by its very structure made up of two hydrogens and an oxygen. The combination of these three atoms means they form a specific shape. It is a molecule centered on the oxygen. The hydrogen, because they are charged, bond at a specific angle 104.5 degrees. The atoms also create a polar charge. It means the oxygen is always oriented on the opposite side to the hydrogens. Think of how a magnet can't have the same poles facing each other without repulsion. Water, because it is made up of an oxygen and two hydrogens, can undergo some changes. This owes to the way oxygen has free two spaces for an electron. This is why two hydrogens bond to it. They share the electrons, leaving the hydrogen and oxygen full. There are exceptions, but we'll get to those later. But it's also the first reason why structured water is impossible. It cannot form the structure we are talking about. You can get two water molecules, but not one structure of a water molecule made from the same components from two separate molecules of water. The first reason would be that you'd have to lose a hydrogen based on the numbers of molecules given for structured water. Where is that extra hydrogen going? Who knows? The second to that is the fact that the hydrogen and oxygen that remain, the hydroxide molecule, is not stable. Yeah. There is also the issue of how structured water is meant to be made. Somehow you take a structured molecule, that is water, two hydrogens and oxygen, and you strip one hydrogen of one, somehow or other dispose of the hydrogen, which should be making hydrogen gas and vaporizing away, but we don't see that. All we know is that there are now three hydrogens bonded to two oxygens, and this is all interconnected. No. We don't have any free-floating hydrogen ions, and we don't have any other issues. So obviously, they're not generating what they're claiming to be generating. And frankly speaking, any halfway competent individual could design an experiment to demonstrate that this doesn't work. All you need is the water being generated in a closed container, a tube coming off of this, and to collect any gas that is made in that tube. The contents, if it is hydrogen gas, should burn, because hydrogen gas does burn. And then we have the simple fact that, well, because of what it is, the products claiming to create structured water can't be making anything but water, which, given that it's already water, means they're not making anything at all. Next we have claims about the change in pH from making structured water. Now, this is where we need to talk about some of the intricacies and oddities of water. About 1 in every billion water molecule has an extra hydrogen that will jump from one molecule to another. This is also known as heavy water, or deuterium, the water used for nuclear power plants. To be clear about it, it's 1 in every billion. You don't have a lot of water available in the standard residential or domestic size units to do this. This means that it's simply not practical for this to be the way they're making it. Not just that, but the rate at which that molecule moves from one water molecule to another is in the thousands, if not tens of thousands of times every second. And you have 1 in a billion that's doing this. Yeah. There's also the fact that, well, when you have the hydrogen ion, its attraction to the oxygen doesn't last very long because, first of all, this again, two open electron slots for a hydrogen to bond to. Because those openings don't last very long and the hydrogens effectively drive each other away, that third hydrogen ion is driven off, leaving behind only the two that can effectively bond to oxygen due to the nature of covalence. Yeah. And the also reality of the moving of hydrogen ions. The reality is that even if, and this is the big if, they could make structured water, that hydrogen would very quickly jump off of where they've made it and bond to something else. This occurs in pico to femtoseconds, and we'll get into the details of why that's bullshit shortly. And now for the purported biological function and consequential health benefits. The human body functions on the basis of water. Your body is 70% water. If you were to make any changes, it would cause a drastic shift. Because of this, structured water, if consumed in large quantities, would be dangerous. And by large quantities, we're talking about anything more than a few milliliters. That's significantly less than an ounce for those using freedom units. That's because of the changes it would cause in pH. And next we have the practicalities of how it would work. After all, this is not water taking up the volume of water, and the body doesn't actually have a mechanism to dispose of it because the renal system can't deal with structured water, largely because it's imaginary, but also because biologically and physiologically no mechanism exists. We then have what can be best described as concerns about how it's supposed to be generated and how it's supposed to work. There are purported mechanisms and ways to create it. Now, the ways to create it have been tested in laboratories. The industrial manufacturing methods are significantly less reliable. One of the easiest ways to find it and look at it is to use something like far-infrared scanning or spectroscopy. This is key. The human body, and especially our squishy insides, where just about all the water is found, is exposed to infrared light. This is really important. Laboratory testing has found it reacts with and to measurable infrared light. That's how they measure it. If structured water was floating around in your body and you were exposed to any infrared light, such as that in daylight, you would cause problems with the structured water. It would start to break down very quickly into what is likely water and hydrogen or hydroxide groups. Because of this, you now have radical oxygen species. This is bad. This would be why structured water, when tested with infrared methods among others, is not so different from normal water, or urine for that matter. In fact, in order to be able to get measurements of it and similar, they've had to use intense laser pulses, because that is the only way to disrupt the structure of the water and turn it into structured water. But it recovers within picoseconds. Understand, picoseconds are tiny, and we'll get to those in a bit. And then finally we have a brilliant case made by one website that structured water has the optimal pH. As we've already touched on, in short, no. In fact, there's a slightly longer answer, but no should be enough. Structured water should have a pH close enough to normal water not to care. That is a pH of 7. pH within the human body varies from somewhere around 2 in the stomach, which is incredibly acidic, to about 9 or rather alkali in places like the skin and parts of the reproductive tract. The majority of the fluid within your body is at a pH of 7.4. This fluid is blood. The human body cannot go below a pH of 7.35 or above a pH of 7.45. This leads to acidosis or alkalosis respectively. Both are bad. Both can end in death, and if you are at a 7, you are likely long since dead. Now, there have been some very limited laboratory-based examples of structured water. Let's be clear about this. It can be made. Let's also be clear, these are limited and very specifically set in a laboratory. Laboratory-based is key here. It is not something you can order online and get shipped to you. The reason why is that all of these very well designed, thoroughly researched and published findings have been very short-lived, as in the best possible way to create structured water still only leads to existing for femtoseconds, if not picoseconds. A femtosecond is roughly 1 to the negative 15th power of a second. That is a 0 followed by 14 more zeros after the decimal point before we get to an actual number. It's not something you can just order off Amazon and expect it to arrive to you in functioning condition, even with Amazon Prime. As you can see, chemically, structurally, and practically, the claims of structured water, the benefits of it, and just about all the other pseudoscientific bullshit simply isn't sustainable, and it is why functioning and structural water is just bullshit, plain and simple. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please do post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.